Hello everyone. So in this video, we're going to talk about what is AI search and how AI search work with RAG concept. So before we start, let's understand what is an AI search, right? So if we go to any website and if we just need some information like how can I set up my account, right? So there's two way. One is we'll go to the knowledge base and we'll search for the information, right? Or we have an option that it will show a AI search chatbot in which we'll just ask for how to set up my account, right? And it will give the step by step information in a natural language, right? So this is how the AI search work, right? Now let's see what is semantic search and how it is different from the traditional keyword based search, right? So I'll just take an example. So let's say a user is having a query, best books to read for personal growth, right? Now if I take an example of keyword search, what it will do, it will just search for the result with the exact phrase like personal growth books, right? And it will return those list of books. But if I take an example of a semantic search, right? So what it will do, it will return all the similar kind of results matching with the query, right? So it might be a book for self improvement, or a book for leadership and personal development, or a book to inspire growth and success, right? So if you see the difference, in keyword search we are getting the books with the exact phrase, but here we are getting a similarity search results, right? So this is how semantic search work. Now let's see what is vector db and embedding, right? So in AI search, vector database is very important. Lots of company are nowadays launching their own vector database to store any unstructured data, right? So if I need to evaluate the difference between these two database, right? So if I talk about a traditional database, so there we can store some kind of structured data, right? Like a user information, or let's say if I need to store a image, so I'll just store a binary object in a particular field, right? But if I take an example of vector database, so in vector db we can store those images in a multi-dimensional space, right? So why we need a vector database? We can store it in a traditional database, right? Now if I talk about doing a query on those data, right? So if I just stored a mountain image, right, in a traditional database, I will need to search for a specific keyword like select mountain from particular table, right? And it will give me that particular specific image of mountain, right? But if I talk about vector database search, so into vector database, as we are storing it in a multi-dimensional space, that means and we do a similarity search on these data. That means if I search for a mountain, so it will let's say if it have 20 mountain images, so it will just search for the similar kind of result. Like if I just ask a question, a green mountain, right? So it will go and search for all of these similar kind of mountain images with the greenery, right? And it will just show me the result. So this is how we can differentiate vector database with a traditional database, right? Now let's see what is vector embedding and how we store the data in a vector database, right? So we have unstructured data like pdf, text document, or a audio file. So we'll need a embedding function. Embedding function is a AI model. Basically it is just an embedding model that will be used to create a vector representation, I mean array of numbers, right? So we are not storing the unstructured data like images, pdf into a binary object. Instead, what we are storing, we are doing a vector embedding, right? We are creating an embedding of these data, and we are storing it in a numerical array, right? We are storing it in a vector representation in a multi-dimensional space, right? So this is how we store the unstructured data in a vector database, right? And there are lots of application of vector database. Like in AI search, we usually use vector database to do the search, right? So we'll see in our next slide how the entire AI search work, and what is the role of vector database in the AI search, right? But before we start, let's understand what is chunking, right? So chunking is one of the important component in AI search, right? See, whenever we do a search, we need a data source, right? We need a data source. Let's take an example of a company data, right? So company is having a knowledge base of like let's say 200 PDF in which they stored uh, knowledge base, right, for a new joining. So it have all the information where they can start with their first day, then they have other information like the training plans and some other onboarding information, customer information, right? So these information we are having in a knowledge base. Now for a new joinee it will be quite difficult to go and search for those information, right? But if we use a AI search into these knowledge base, then it will be quite easy. User will just ask any question in a natural language, and the AI system will generate a response, right? Let's say I need a training plan for day 2, right? So I'll just ask the question and it will give me a training plan for day 2. Instead of I will go through the entire knowledge base, I need the information, I can get the information right away, right? So let's relate this with the chunking, right? So chunking means we'll create a chunk, will break down those knowledge base into multiple document, into multiple chunk, and then we'll start in store in a vector database, right? So the first step will be data preparation, right, where we'll prepare the data for our AI system. So we'll take a reliable data source, we'll create a chunked document, and then we'll store it in a vector database, right? Now how it works, right? So as we are taking an example of a new joinee, right? So he just asked about a question around what is a training plan for day 2, right? So what we do a vector search with the user question, right? So we will go through the entire vector database and will search all of those similar kind of result that is basically similar to training plan, right? Now we have the document, right? We have those data. Now what we need to do from those chunks, we need to extract the useful information, right? So in our next slide, we'll see how actually the entire AI search process work with RAG, because AI search work on a RAG concept and it is quite popular nowadays. So let's see how the entire RAG concept work, right? So the RAG start with the data ingestion, right? So this is the first component in RAG. If I talk about data ingestion, it is something like a chunking process and storing the data into the vector database, right? So in data ingestion, basically we will ingest the data into vector db, but we cannot directly ingest or store the data, right? So we'll create a chunk. Same process will follow for data chunking, right? We'll create a chunk document for all of our data source. Then we'll use an embedding model. So here embedding model is used to create a embedding vector. If I go to my previous slide, right, what we are doing, we are just using the embedding function to create a vector representation of the data. So basically we'll use the embedding model to create a vector embedding of these chunks, like a vector representation, a numerical representation in an array format, right? Now we'll store the embedding vector into vector database. Maybe it will be a MongoDB or some other vector database, right? So this is the entire ingestion process. So we provided the data to our AI system, right? Now the next step will be retrieval, right? Retrieval means it is something that will do an interaction with the user, right? So user will ask a question. Now when a user asks a question to a AI agent, right? So firstly, AI agent will create a embedding vector of those questions, right? So again, we'll use an embedding model and we'll create an embedding vector of these questions, right? Now we need to keep in mind that whatever embedding model we are using in ingestion, we need to use the same embedding model. So let's say if we are using OpenAI embedding model, so we'll need to use the same OpenAI embedding model for generating the embedding vector for the question, right? Now we'll do a vector search. So basically we'll do a semantic search against the indexed embedding. So during ingestion, what we did, we also created an index of those vector embedding for a, I mean, better search result or for a better performance, right? So we'll do a semantic search into vector database. Now, as we have the vector embedding of our question, we did the search on our vector database. Now vector DB will return the relevant document, the matching document from our query, right? Now the third component will be generation. So this is where the LLM, large language model, comes in the picture, that will basically generate a AI response for our question. It will give, when we ask any question in a natural language, we'll get the response in a natural language format, right? We'll get a very concise response. So we cannot directly give the relevant document that we search from the vector DB, because this contain a similar kind of result. So it will not match with the exact question, but it will have all the similar kind of answer that might be related to this question. Now this LLM model will fine tune this response. So what we'll need to do, we'll need to create a prompt for our model. So basically we'll use our question plus the relevant document. So we'll using these two question plus relevant document will create a prompt for our large language model, right? Now large language model will generate a response that a user can understand, right? So this is how RAG work. Now let's have some deep dive into RAG workflow, and we'll try to understand it in a, like, more simpler workflow, right? So here we have a PDF document, right? The first step will be document loader and text splitter, right? That will basically create a text chunk. So let's say we have this PDF, we created a fourth chunk for our text, right? Now the embedding generation model will create a embedding vector and store it in a vector database, right? So basically this is known as ingestion, data ingestion, right? Now the user ask a question, user did a query. So basically we'll use embedding model to create a query embedding, I mean vector representation of the question, right? Then we'll do a similarity search, and the top matches will be passed to the LLM, and LLM will be fine tune the response and send the response to the user, right? So this is how the RAG workflow work. Now let's see an real world example, right? So one of the example is like I'm just a user, I'm just a owner of a car, and I just want to have some information around automatic braking, right? So if I do a simple search, a keyword search, right? So what I need to do, I need to read the manual. I need to go to the specific page and check how I can turn off the reverse automatic braking in Volvo, right? But with the AI search, the entire process will be very seamless. We can get our response within a second, right? So how actually it work, right? So if I search for like how do I turn off reverse automatic braking on Volvo, right? So this question basically will create a embedding vector of the question and will pass it into vector database. Now we'll find the relevant context from the company data, right? So as we have the manual already ingested in our data source, so this particular query that we created an embedding vector will be searched in a vector database and will get a matching result. So let's say we get a 5 result around automated breaking, right? Now this question and context will be whatever matching result we get from the vector db and the question that we asked earlier, right? So this two, it will create a prompt and pass into the ai model. Then the ai model will provide the reliable answer, like the driver can choose to deactivate auto brake with rear auto brake, right? So we get the entire steps of turn off the reverse automatic braking on Volvo, right? So this is how the AI search work in a real world example. So this is just one example. AI search work in chatbot, in AI search bar on any particular website. There are lots of other application of AI chatbot. Now in my next video, I'll be going to have a practical demonstration of how we can create a AI search system, how we can store the PDF document in vector database. So we'll do a real world practical demonstration on this. So thank you so much for watching this video.